Welcome to Season 5 of SEL in EDU. This is a space for educators who believe social emotional learning isn't an add-on. It's part of how we teach, lead, and show up every day. I'm Dr. Krista, and in each episode, we'll explore real stories, practical strategies, and the human side of learning that helps schools grow with intention. Today, I'm joined by Stephanie Clinise, a high school ELA educator in Pennsylvania who brings over a decade of experience designing classrooms where literacy, technology, and belonging work together. What stood out immediately in our conversation was not just her expertise with AI and instructional design, but the way she centers students in every decision, thinking deeply about how to create space for voice, agency, and authentic connection. Whether she's reimagining how students engage with writing, using AI as a tool to support, not replace, thinking, or helping students understand the why behind what they're learning, Stephanie reminds us that meaningful learning happens when students are invited into the process, not just the outcome. Thanks for coming back for another episode of SEL in EDU. I am with a fellow high school teacher, Stephanie, in Pennsylvania, and we're here to talk to you about AI in education. Hi, Stephanie, how are you tonight?
I'm good. Getting through it, having a Tuesday.
Yes, and what is more amazing is just our timing right here, because we first talked a couple weeks ago and I felt your passion for AI, for SEL, for restorative practices, and you were getting ready to go present at our state ed tech conference. And so you had a couple presentations there. So first of all, how was the conference for you? And tell me about what you were sharing about.
Okay, so P&C is one of my favorite things every year. This was my third year going, my second year presenting. And it's one of those events where I get to reconnect with people that I've either not seen in several months or I haven't seen since the last conference. And it's just like, it's adults running around and I'm so excited to see you. And we're all picking right back up where we left off, whether it was at our KTI summit over the summer or the last meetup or the last call, or even if it was just the last conference. So when I first was introduced to going into conference spaces, especially more local ones, I was like, this is a game changer. There are just so many people nearby who feel the same type of like passion and I guess enthusiasm is the right word for how I feel about this job. So it's so great to know that I get to connect with people like that. I did get to have two different types of presentations this year, which was its own unique journey.
I mentioned to you before we started that I get multiple ideas in my head at the same time.
Yeah, that's being a teacher.
And sorting through and like, okay, what's the most responsible place to start? I loved it. And as soon as we first met, I love the fact that you see the value in connecting with others outside of the day-to-day space that we're teaching in, because I do know some people are exhausted and they have families and they just need to get back home. And I always found myself invigorated when I got a chance to be around people who were as passionate. And so, like, especially when you're not seeing them in a while, to get a chance to connect, and it's just uplifting. And then you learn new things and you share what you've been doing, and it just gets you through the next couple of weeks then as well.
I absolutely echo that. It's invigorating is really, truly the best response for it. I will go in there and I've looked at the sessions ahead of time, but then I have the opportunity to socialize and meet the people who are presenting them. And I'm like, oh, wait, I love your energy. Like, I got to see what you mean. And it's just so nice. And it's people who are not even teaching the same things as me. And that's one of the things I've loved most about going to these types of events is that now all of a sudden I'm learning from a middle school science teacher who I wouldn't have even really connected with in my own district. I went to one over this summer. It was run by PAECT as well. It was a summit called KTI. And I ended up working with a kindergarten teacher from a few districts away, not in my same county. And we had ideas that the other person could build off of. And that is the type of energy that I want to carry from that teacher and from the conversations we had back into my classroom. And that's where it really becomes that invigorating piece of, it's not just me out here coming up with ideas or me talking to other ninth grade English teachers. They're amazing, especially the ones I work with, but it's so cool to get a perspective from somebody who just has no clue what my day looks like.
Yes. And I can't even imagine like the kindergartners with my own boys, and I'm sure with your own kids. I could not do that with like the same 25 kids all day long.
I think it's beautiful for the people who can, but people very often say that to me with ninth grade. They're like, how can you hang out? Like, ninth grade, are you serious? I'm like, yes, I'm serious. It's so fun in ninth grade. Then I think that that's the way that people who will find themselves in these early elementary grades are like, what do you mean it sounds difficult? They love it. And those are the type of people I get to meet in these conferences and whatever, just any of these educational spaces. These ones have happened to be very tech focused, which the kindergarten teacher was like, I know it seems weird, but like tech is for us. And I've done so many cool things to support my kids with it. And I'm like, tell me everything because I can learn from it. Right. It's about people who are excited to be where they are and don't want to be sorry about it and are not apologetic about being like, yeah, I am doing this really cool thing and let's all share it. And everyone can go back to their classrooms feeling like, yeah, check out this new idea.
And it's keeping the kids at the center of everything. And I know I don't want to lose track of your 2 sessions. And so I know people are going back being like, I met this amazing woman, Stephanie. She teaches high school ELA, and here's what I learned. So would you mind sharing a little bit about what each of those sessions were? And then I have a couple questions that I'd like to pick your brain on around AI and our students.
I was very fortunate to be able to present 2 different times this time at P&C this past February. The one presentation I did was a poster session, and I'd seen poster sessions and I felt like it feels like a lot of work. You're standing there and you just got to like keep talking to people when they come up. So I presented a poster session that was focused on how to leverage AI in like your ELA classroom or truly any classroom setting without changing systems or assignments or routines that are already in place. The question is, how am I supposed to use AI? What you're looking for are the things that are taking up a lot of time, but aren't bringing a lot of value into your classroom. So there are times where I'm like, I have sat here and worked on a multiple choice quiz that is going to take these kids 7 minutes to do. And I've poured so much time into it. And I'm like, what am I doing? You know, I can pull it from the back of a textbook. I can pull it from a workbook, or I can use the different tools that are out there. Here's the original version I had. I need to punch it up. And it's a quick turnaround on something like that. Now, I still have to go in and critique it. It's not that I'm spending a ton less time doing any of these routines and structures and lessons. It's that I'm able to build a better quality outcome for that same amount of time, or use that time in my classroom to hang out with the kids and talk directly to my students instead of like hustling back, trying to get stuff done all the time in that window. Because as much as I, love talking about connecting with teachers outside the classroom, I do have a life that is outside of like Mrs. Clinise.
Yeah. And so that poster session, I really appreciate because it gives you more time back in some ways with the students. You're still thinking, you're still critiquing and analyzing, but it's helping to synthesize some things that you don't need to spend your brain power on.
It's helping to synthesize those things. Absolutely. And this is something that I talked about too. The poster session was funny because it was like an hour and a half of me just like full volume talking at whoever was coming through the hallway, which like if we've ever spoken, which you and I have, we know I get louder and louder and louder as it goes on. So I did have a journey of losing my voice a little bit for the second one. But what I said to you when they came by, I said, the whole point is it doesn't matter what tool you're using. It doesn't matter any of this. If you don't feel that AI, that you don't need help with something, if it's not going to serve your students and serve your classroom, then you don't need it. I don't need it for everything that I do. I did this really, and I showcased some of this too. I brought in some projects that students had done. And it was a really amazing experience because my students did some of it online, some of it with AI support, and some of it was on paper. And there's still something about it. Like my students had to have these manila folders with all of their compiled research and all of their rough drafts. And I truly believe there was some value in them coming out very officially with their folder and being like, okay, I'm ready for my meeting. And then we go through whatever's done and whatever their next step is. If I was walking around and having every single one of these conversations every single day about your topic sentence, or a student going, I don't know what to write about, or I need another person, I'm like, okay, I can't brainstorm for you. But what we can create is this tool that will help push you in the direction or suggest different things for you so that Miss Clinise is not going around 25 times. Okay, why don't we go on Google? Why don't we look this up? These are things that kids just need a little nudge, little reminder. They're not teaching them research, but it is taking a little bit of that redundant conversation away so that when they are coming up with their folders, we're getting a little bit more into the nitty gritty. We're like, oh, I really love this connection. Have you thought about XYZ? Rather than the same pieces over and over again. And that's what I think people were most interested in. It was like, it wasn't AI for the sake of AI, and it never should be. It should be support and teaching, in my case, high school students, like we talked about, how to use these tools to support themselves in their work, never to replace their work. This is a tool the same way Google is a tool, the same way that a hammer is a tool. Like, it is here to do the things to help us expedite processes, not replace the thinking and the learning, and definitely not to replace having to sit down and talk with me about your project.
Well, there's two things that are really rising to the surface that are resonating with me. And the first is that in this, it seems like it allowed the students to focus more on their process of learning and how their writing evolved over time, instead of just, here's my final product that I'm giving to you and I'm waiting for a grade and then I'm done with it.
I mean, you couldn't have said it more clearly. It's so true, because I expressed that to them. And this isn't like my own project. The entire ninth grade department is doing the same project. And we are looking at it through this lens of, how do we teach kids? It's not about just the outcome. It's what you did along the way. And I got to see a few different students start with one path. Like, one girl wanted to talk about mental health. And then as she was going through and doing her research, she's like, actually, I really want to talk about it for student athletes and how it evolves for them over time, and how they're not, there's not like a long-term plan for taking care of these kids after college, and who are some people they can look to for it. And I'm like, that's because you did the research, because your focus was on bringing research to me, and they were highlighting and annotating on paper. And I just think that process, instead of the outcome, I told them, I said, you're going to write as many rough drafts as you want. I said, that's not the goal here. The goal here is for you to be able to look at, the Power of Your Voice was about like different activists. Look at people who have been using their voice. What did they do? How were they successful? How could you contribute to that? I said, and when the research is all done, all you're doing is just putting it together and turning it in. I said, that part's the easy part. And you are checking in with me on the process.
Where were you when I was writing my dissertation?
Oh my gosh, right? Like, I think about this stuff all the time. I was like, I should have done more with this.
Well, and you can, and you are, because you're constantly incorporating it and integrating it into what you're doing. And knowing you in just the short time that I have, the modifying and adapting. And the piece that also jumps out to me is when I think about writing the dissertation, at the time I didn't have AI, but I had Grammarly, and paid for it to review things. Over time, I realized the patterns of mistakes I was making so that I could then start front loading and doing those correctly. So I feel like if you have enough difficulty with the topic sentence enough times, and you're seeing the pattern of what AI is giving to help you, you can course correct that after a while on your own.
This is the whole point, though. This is what I said to the kids. So let's say you put in your introductory paragraph into whichever feedback tool I've chosen for that day, and you come up to me and you're like, I have put it in 4 times. I have edited it. I got nothing, Miss Clinise. Then yeah, we need to work on either sure, let's look at it and see why you're not grasping it. Or more importantly, is the AI wrong?
Yes.
Because AI is artificial intelligence that is based on the internet, which was created by humans who are frequently wrong and biased. We use these AI tools as also that launch pad of talking about AI literacy. What does critical thinking look like? You need to not just question yourself and all the stuff you're reading online. Question what anything from the internet is coming out. I told them to treat it like social media. Question it. Mm-hmm. If it doesn't look right to you, then it's not. And I love them of saying, like, the first time I rolled out the one tool, I said, let me know what it does. I've never seen it with students before. We're learning this together. But this one girl comes running out. She goes, it says I don't have a quote. Look at my quote. It's in there. I said, yes. Beautiful. This is the perfect example for students to realize you finally trust it. You can't finally trust it to write your paper. And as I told them, I have been reading 9th grade writing since the year they were born. So I simply know if it was written by a 14-year-old or a chatbot.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I started teaching when you were born.
They said that to me and I said, I don't think so. They were like, yeah, we were born this year. I was like, I don't think that's true. They're like, Miss Clinise, we didn't make that up. I was like, you might have. No, but it's one of those things where I told them, I was like, you cannot possibly think that I all of a sudden, the year after Chat GPT is everywhere, that all of a sudden ninth graders all write exactly the same. Said nobody wants to watch a movie or read a book where you guess the ending and everything that's coming along. I said, I can tell by the first paragraph because I see where you're going. And it's good. That's what the literacy piece is. Just like when we teach kids how to read or teach them math, we don't hide the numbers and the letters and talk about it. We put it in the hands of kids. And that's what we do with AI. And we go through it together transparently.
Well,
I think that's the biggest piece of when we talk about SEL and education, and we talk about how is social emotional learning and AI even related. I'm like, because we're doing it together, and you have to humanize yourself and the students and kind of dehumanize this machine of like, this is a machine that I told a very specific prompt, and it will only do that.
Yeah.
That's it. That's all it can do. It can't do anything else that we don't ask it to do. It's not a person. It doesn't have a personality. It is a machine that we ask to do a specific task. If it's something that we can automate, we can use that so that we can bring the focus back into other things. It always makes me think of when teachers told me I would never walk around with a calculator in my pocket.
Yes, look,
I do though.
when it reminds me, again, this was 15 years ago, working as a coach with middle school, and I was helping some social studies classes, and they were looking up the year of their birth, and they had to find something that happened worldwide. And this one girl had been born in, oh gosh, I hope I get these years right. I think it was either 89 or 91. And she was looking up the Tiananmen Square massacre, and she just Googled it, she typed it in, and she's like, this picture. And I'm like, oh, actually, that's a picture from the Vietnam conflict. It's called the My Lai massacre. You don't want to use that. She goes, but that's what Google told me. I'm like, I realize that that's what it showed you, but I promise you this is not a picture that you're going to want to use. Let's click on it. And she was insistent that that's what the computer said and that I was wrong.
No, I'm with you on that.
Yeah. So it's like when, well, texting, well, we used to send notes and fold them up and like, tuck them into little things and like flip them off to people. Or, there's always going to be something, but those underlying commonalities will still be the same. And so it's more about, like you said, the literacy than necessarily fighting against the tool. But let's talk about, as things evolve, we need to be very thoughtful about it. And I love how you brought in the dehumanize it.
Well, if you see too, you're going to start seeing a lot of these platforms. And I know Magic School has already rolled this out on the student side. They have a chat, their chat bot is Raina. And on the student side, they've taken away the name Raina. They are de-anthropomorphizing it because they do not want to promote this idea that you can talk to it like a person. It's not, it's programming. I actually said this to my students again today. So usually, I mean, if everyone in here does this, right? I put my students into a tool, but they're limited by that tool. They can only use the tools I give them, no matter what the platform is, so that I can track everything that's going on. And I told them that. I said, so this is a machine, and I gave it words to code it to talk to you about the first few pages of your independent reading book, because I have not read all the books that you guys have read, and I want you to just be able to kind of do a chit-chat conversation. I said, but it's not me you're talking to. It is a computer. And I'm going to go back and read the conversation so that I can see more about your book and how you feel about it. I said, that's it, because I don't have that kind of time to be able to sit down and be like, so how was your first chapter? I'd love to, but this way I can see all of them, and I can go in and check in with the kid who might be really struggling and not sharing anything. I can pull kids as needed throughout this process, but it just kind of gives somebody an outlet where it's not graded, it's not having to sit in front of me, and they can do this, kind of distill the information. Wow, this is my first day with independent reading of the semester. How'd it go? And what have I learned about my book? Do I even like it anymore? I told them, I said, you're just reflecting with yourself. This is just something answering and prompting you with the types of questions I would ask.
Yes.
But now everyone's required to participate in the discussion.
And I love this idea too, because I remember being a coach and going into different middle school and high school classrooms, and the students got a chance to pick something that they were interested in. And the teacher would navigate from group to group and listen in and spur the conversation along. And now there's a better use of time, and it allows the students to go at their own pace and learn, but give them more autonomy in what they're picking.
It's the autonomy that they get in the conversation. It can go where they want, right? And sometimes we talk about high risk and low risk questions. So when you're talking about an independent reading book, I recently had a student teacher and she was like, oh, we should maybe have everyone share what book they're reading and why. And I was like, whoa, that is so personal. Imagine this kid was like, well, this is just a book for me. I don't have to do a big project. I don't have to present it to the class. I feel safe in this room because that is like my big goal with it. I don't want them to be like, well, I don't want to tell everyone why I'm reading this book. Like, I think they can be really personal. But with this platform, now they can be very honest with it. And the only person who's going to see it is me. And they weren't put on the spot to look me in the face and say, I chose this book because of, this experience I had and it speaks to me. They can instead write it down, feel a little safer, and know that it's not out in the sphere anywhere. It's in this program that I have access to. So I think it takes a high risk question and still allows it to be in the classroom, but with low risk social consequences.
And I think on your part, that takes a lot of proficiency and skill in social awareness that we want you to learn and to grow. And at the high school level, there are great diverse books that students access depending upon where they want to learn and grow or connect to. And it's got me thinking too about not everything needs to be shared out with the whole class. Sometimes as an adult, you're helping to maintain that it's safe emotionally and psychologically and physically safe for the students, but they're getting a chance to grow in their own way with what they need.
And exactly. So I want them to feel safe and comfortable and share, I'm reading this book because I identify with this character without crossing a line that I don't need to be crossing. Social awareness is so different than me being like, tell me about your feelings. This is just a safe place for you to tell me about your book. My job is not to sit there and gather all that information. We have a long talk about what a mandated reporter is. But we have a space where it's safe to feel comfortable talking about why you chose a specific book or why you maybe identified with a character. And I don't ask what character do you want to be your best friend in a journal? I'm saying, who would you want to be stuck on a stranded island with and why? And I always give the example of Katniss Everdeen because she knows all of the plants, right? We talk about the Hunger Games. She's going to find me food. However, if there's a rescue opportunity, I know she's going to ditch me. But she'll do anything to get back to that family. So, but it's and I always give these examples of it doesn't have to be who reminds you of somebody. It can be this separate moment where they're more identifying with traits. And I think that that's where our restorative and what social emotional learning or what social awareness isn't just sharing all your feelings. It's having a space to acknowledge them, whether it's about a piece of literature or a poem or a song, or it's just my independent reading novel that I really like because I read it in 7th grade and it makes me happy and I want to read it in here. Go for it. Right? That's where we build it in this space.
One of the things that I often talk about with people is that there are 40 different skills. And so, yes, the first couple are around. Are you able to name your emotions? Do you know how your emotions are linked to feelings, linked to thoughts and actions? But that does not have to be something that you start off every class with and that you push on, because sometimes I don't want to talk about it either. So I was just working with somebody and they're like, I don't know if they call it woo-woo. And I'm like, no, not really. I'd rather lean towards some of the other skills because I don't always want to talk about my emotions. I'm not ready to always open that up. And how can we be respectful of the students as well, especially in a literature course where they're reading and connecting?
And we're reading and connecting with themes and these essential questions that are very relevant and pertinent to their lives.
I have a question for you. I've been hearing people who are elementary teachers or early middle school, and they're like, I don't like AI. It scares me. I don't know what it's doing with my information. And I understand there is a difference between preparing our students for what they're going to experience in the world My kids are not young though, so I don't really have an opinion about younger people using it because it's not my realm, not my experience. But I'm curious, in your studies, in your experiences with your own kids and what you're connecting with at Pete and C, what are people feeling about in terms of younger people using AI?
I do have kind of a unique perspective with that. I am a high school teacher with little guys at home, but in our capacity, I'm also an AI ambassador, like an AI coach, if you will. I'm one of the district's AI coaches. And so I'm one of 3 high school AI coaches for that building. And then we have two in the middle school, and then one in every elementary school. And so we get together as a committee and talk about what are the struggles, what are the hesitations, what are our successes, how does all that kind of play out. And at the elementary school, yeah, it does feel a little different. Teachers are like, why would I put this in front of them in those early elementary ages? And kind of the overall is they don't need it the same way that they don't need to be on an iPad. Now, can it benefit them in some ways? Sure. There is a huge benefit to some people have said they'll create like a chat bot that's supposed to like be in the realm of one of their favorite books, right? Or a favorite show. And it's like you can tell a chat bot to be a character from, let's say, like Bluey. And it's like, what questions do you have? And as a class, you can come together and talk to them. So there's a place for it to be fun and lighthearted with little guys, with your younger elementary students. And I think that the teachers benefit from it a lot, but I wouldn't be in a rush to put it in front of, especially not lower elementary. Upper elementary, again, we've seen a lot of success with writing feedback, but otherwise, no, I don't see a lot of upper elementary going into it. I see a lot of it with this idea that teachers can build things a little bit differently for students. We can scaffold lessons better for them. We can build, right? Like it's the scaffolding one, it's building better depth of knowledge questions. It's rephrasing for students who are struggling with it. We have translators within all these different tools now. You can level text. So a lot of it shows up on the teacher side as you're looking all the way up into middle school. And in middle school, I think is where we start to see applications within science and being able to practice different things more, not really hands-on, but see a practical application of it. And always with the writing feedback, because I feel like that's the one where teachers are like, I can't sit down and rewrite a paragraph with every single kid all the time. Or what are the rest of these students doing? Like we have an obligation to the entire class. So let's reteach this skill, put it out into one of these spaces, whether it's a room or a space or a writing feedback platform all on its own. And that's where you start to see it in the upper grades. But in those like lower middle, no, there's not a huge need to understand a lot of it. Teachers can use it to make their lives a little more organized and keep things and update things and refresh things, because this job, like Romeo and Juliet, isn't changing. Like that story is the same, but I can build something new with it with these tools.
I'm glad you brought that piece up because one of my biggest ahas, there was a high school teacher up in Maine that I was working with who said one student just does not care about Romeo and Juliet. They want to work on cars. And the student, to my mind, was maybe they didn't want to talk about relationships or talk about families not getting along with each other. To Google, and I'm like, I have a student who is working in the cars. Yeah. And it showed 10 different ways of connecting the student's passion for car mechanics and having a business and how they could relate and make Romeo and Juliet relevant. And I would never have in a million years been able to pull that together myself.
You actually did mention this. You're exactly right that you brought this up, because I remember thinking of like, yeah, I want to get to know my student, and the fact like, oh, you prefer cars and you want to be a mechanic and all that. I can't go learn that. That's not my interest, but I want to know about you and I want to know about your interests. And if I can connect it to what's going on, yeah, that's brilliant. Because you're right. I wouldn't have in a million years been like, there's a fight at a gas station in the Leonardo DiCaprio version.
Yeah, like
there you go. That's fun.
Maybe even if we helped the students think, here's my passion, here's my interest, here's what the curriculum is saying that we need to focus on. Let me go to an AI and see what connections it will pull and what can I do to show my learning by melding the two of those together. And so now we're making learning relevant and meaningful to the student, yet still addressing the core content, the standards and the skills that students need.
Oh my gosh, you just created the best segue for my second presentation at
Let's
PNC.
hear it.
My second presentation was a storyteller session. It was a very short session where I got to just tell a story that was very important to me as a teacher. My story was how in the past several years, especially with the rise of this focus on these one-to-one devices, the rise of AI, the rise of ed tech, all these different things, is kids have access to all the information in the world. So why do they need me? And so my session was about, it was called like, tell them why. When we bring kids into the context of why we're learning what we're learning and how it can be relevant to them, there is much more buy-in and engagement. Because if I just am reading Animal Farm with them and asking them to identify symbols and themes, they can do that without me. They can. And like, I hate to admit that, but like they can. Isn't the whole goal that we are able to launch them, that they can do that? But where's the buy-in to sit there and read the book with me? Where's the buy-in to have these conversations? And so I had said, I started asking my students, why are we reading this? Why are we reading Animal Farm? An allegory about the Russian Revolution written in the 1950s using a farm as the foundation. I said, none of us grew up on a farm. I said, lucky for you guys, my mom's from rural Iowa, so I know everything about farming. So I will get you there. But they were like, you're right. Why does this matter? And so we had that conversation over and over and over again, whether it was why we shouldn't have our cell phones out. Why am I such a stickler about hallway rules? And instead of me being like, well, that's the rule, or reinforcing like, you need to understand these themes, they're very important, they connect back to the Russian Revolution, we focused on the fact that an uneducated population, when the pigs kept everybody else from learning, they became easier to control. And so my students, after the end of this, I said, I could ask them today. Now, not all of them, because I'm a realist here, but there are enough kids who would say, what's the purpose, or why, said something about like, why would a dictator limit access to information? And they will tell you, because an uneducated population is easier to control. And I said, that's why we read the book. Yes, the symbols. Yes, we're going to make the connections. We're still going to hit all the content. We're learning about propaganda and persuasion techniques, but in the context of the world that we need to live in. Everybody out here is selling something. They want you to vote, buy, search, engage with their platform. So you need to be able to look at it and know when somebody's trying to get you to do something and what they're trying to get you to do, so you can make a choice. And that's what the conversation I got to have with that second one was. My students will tell you why we can't have a cell phone. They will tell you why Miss Clinise does have her phone. Do they still have their phones? Sure. Do I make a huge deal out of it? No. But the difference is when I go, hey man, 9 times out of 10, I get a my bad, and it just goes away and there's no more conversation, right? When I say, guys, I know that you don't care about farms. I get it. But what we do need to care about is how this plays out and how this information is still relevant in 2026, right? And it's themes that are transferable. We do it with Romeo and Juliet. And I talk to them, I'm like, why on earth are we reading this book? Why does it matter? And we spend the time up front. And then I'm not having as many battles for engagement throughout the process, because we discussed it. We discussed it at length, and they became a part of the planning. They became a part of the context and the content. And I think that that was my other session. So I'm so glad you gave me that little lead in.
You described it perfectly in saying that they became part of the process. You're not doing ELA to them. You're inviting them to have the conversation, to be critical thinkers, and you're trusting what they're sharing. And I think that that is incredibly important for all students to know that you have value, you have thoughts, you have ideas that are meaningful and relevant and are worthy of contributing. And I can learn some new things from you. And let's take a look at, through all of time, there are some things that have been consistent, no matter how old people were or where they lived in the world.
Universal truths are universal truths for a reason. Like we read, a short story where it's like greed causes people to do terrible things. That's been true forever. We read Romeo and Juliet. When you limit a child's choices, they sometimes make bad ones. Mm. And so we focus heavily on that piece of it, of what does this mean? And how do you find a trusted adult? Because I do not like the friar or the nurse in this story. Nobody is being, no one's worried about the children's safety. But we do have those conversations. And I said, guys, you're at the root of this. That there is no me without you. That's it. That's the whole point, is that you're going to get out of here and understand past that. Yes, you'll be able to engage with people because you were able to talk about a book and recognize a symbol and recognize different persuasive tactics, because you need to be able to exist in this world. But also, like, maybe we had a good time and you got to become a part of the process. And now when you're launched and you're out of here, you know more about the process of when adults are making decisions and how you can be involved in that. And I think that that's what matters, especially when people talk about ninth grade. I'm like, this is my opportunity to set the tone. So I love ninth grade, and I'll stay in ninth grade, and I will keep letting these kids know that, hey, high school is going to be fun. You're going to have a good time. It's really up to you. Get involved in the classroom, get involved out of it. Talk to me about something so we can go forward.
You just said get involved. And I have to also give you kudos, because you're not just saying get involved, you're saying, I have a space for you here. However you want to show up, if you want to share, but I'm seeing a flip side to it, where you're inviting them to get involved, but we as adults need to make the space where they feel they can show up authentically. They can pick books that they want to read and learn about. They can find their own entry points to things, and you're guiding them along the way. And
and the best way to teach, especially young teenagers, that they can show up authentically is by showing up authentically. Like, I show up, and it took me a lot of years to realize this, that me being the loud, goofy weirdo that I am, who loves books and plays whatever music she's in the mood for, all these different things, this isn't something I have to hide from kids. This is something that I can do. And the other day I started like singing along to Celine Dion, and they were like, don't do that. I was like, you can't stop me. I was like, I have a terrible singing voice, and that's called self-awareness. I said, but it's also self-awareness that I love doing this. They're like, can you not? I'm like, no, I must. But we get to do these things, and I'm forgetful. And I tell them on the first day, I said, I got a pink phone case because I'm going to lose my phone in the room, and it has to be hot pink or I can't find it. And I'll ask where my computer is or the remote. And it's like a fun thing. And they're a part of it. And they're like, all right, your computer's over here. And they see me make mistakes, and they hear me apologize when I'm wrong. And that's showing up authentically and giving them the space to do the same thing. Just that's the part that I want. So if you don't want to talk about my book, fine, talk about yours then. If you don't want to talk about this, fine, you're gonna have to talk somewhere. And I don't care if it's on paper, online, wherever it is, but you will figure out how to communicate, right?
And you're giving them all these different entry points that is giving them a sense of agency.
That was one of the things that happened too at P&C this year. It was all about using tech to bridge gaps. Just because some of the students or many of the students don't need that gap filled, or they don't need that bridge, doesn't mean there isn't somebody who will benefit from it. And so we learn it when new technology presents itself, especially in an educational setting. We owe it to ourselves and to our classroom to try and learn about it. And so by learning about it, I can provide that little bridge or that stepping stone for a student who might otherwise not have access to the text or to those themes in the same way, because there's a lot of different ways that people process information. And this makes it easier to differentiate, or simplifies the process of differentiating, not necessarily making it easier, but giving me more options.
And that's still keeping the students at the center, because it's just about, what do you need for life? How can I support you to get to that next level? And we can't just turn away from things that we don't like or don't want to engage with, not at this level. And you're
especially not at high school, especially not with AI being everywhere. And I tell my students, I said, this is about literacy. You have to learn how to use it. As teachers, we didn't have the opportunity with smartphones being in their hands. We didn't have the opportunity with social media. We have the chance now. It's being run, like, people who are former teachers are jumping into this and running these platforms and looking at them and acknowledging what these platforms are doing. For instance, the fact that AI platforms run on that same model as social media platforms. You don't get to the end of your algorithm. You keep scrolling. They will keep sending you stuff to keep you engaged. So will every chat you go into. Everyone I've used continues to ask me a follow-up question. It's never like, good job, have a nice day, I'll see you later. Right? It doesn't do that. And this is what I can push to the students of, it doesn't matter if you think you're done reviewing. in this exam module thing. It will continue to push out more questions and prompt you with things to keep you engaged. And now I have a place where I can show them how it's happening so that maybe they can see that happening in the social media. And as a teacher, I saw it coming. And at first I was like, what? What is this? And then I was like, wait a second, we get it too. And we are going to take the reins on this. And I think I'm seeing more and more teachers who are realizing it's in their hands. So what can we do to help? Because we haven't always had the ability to historically.
That reminds me of when I was a social studies teacher becoming an instructional coach or a tech coach. And I'm like, I'm not the keeper of the history anymore. It's not me being able to go to my computer, because now everybody has computers and can access that information. And so I had kind of that identity crisis too, with what is this going to mean for me? And it completely shifted my philosophy of education because it democratized learning. So
everyone can get to Google.
So as we work on wrapping up, I have an important question, because I have 2 books that I am super psyched about right now. I am curious, what has been the last book that you've read or that you're currently reading that just hugged at your heart and you're like, everybody needs to hear about this?
There is only one answer to this, and it's Project Hail Mary. If you have not, I want to say that I had trouble getting on board with audiobooks because I was like, they don't read as fast as me. And that's not the voice. I don't like that voice or things like that. I had a friend who said, you've got to read Remarkably Bright Creatures. I said, isn't this the one about a talking octopus? And she goes, I need you to listen to it. And I said, okay. And then I listened to it. I'm like sobbing by the end of it. I'm like, this is the greatest thing in the world. She's my department chair. She's like a really wonderful person. She goes, you have to do Project Hail Mary as an audiobook. And I said, are you sure? And she said, if you thought Remarkably Bright Creatures was good, do this one. I backed it up, if you will, so that I could listen to the ending again. I was like, I don't want this book to end. And at the heart of it is humanity. And he's, of course, a teacher. So that doesn't hurt. And I love space and things like it. It just brought so much together. And what are we willing to do for one another? And what are we not willing to do for one another? And what does create humanity between living beings? If you haven't read it, no spoilers. Like,
a book club with people who are across the country. There's 9 of us, and a couple of them have read that, and it is on my list. But I'm glad you said to listen to the audio.
You must.
Because Remarkably Bright Creatures, that octopus had an accent, and I was addicted to it. He was brilliant.
It was the most important voice. I would listen to him. If he told me to do anything, I would do it. I'd be like, yes, sir. You sound very serious and important and intelligent.
So
because he is a remarkably bright creature.
I have one for you. I just finished listening to Theo of Golden. It was beautifully narrated. And it is this author's first publication. And I am obsessed with it. And it's everything about humanity and connecting people. And I'm telling everybody about it.
Theo of Golden?
Theo of Golden.
Okay, I can't wait. I'm like, I take recommendations. I'll read most any type of book. I told my students I had to be more mindful because I started setting goals for myself of how many books I wanted to read. And then that became my entire personality. And I was like, I can't do that anymore. So I actually deleted, to most people, it's like book loving, what did you do? I deleted all of those apps where I tracked them, because then I became like obsessive about how many did I read. So for me, that was a place where I finally had to remove that part of tech and that part of socializing, because there were so many apps out there and I'm like trying them all and trying to get book recommendations. And then I was like, get off of them. The people in your life will tell you what to read.
That's very smart though, because I do, and I feel like I'm not enjoying the process because I'm trying to get to the outcome.
So I deleted them, and now people will be like, what was the last book you read? And I'm like, I forget. But I go on Libby and I'm like, okay, I can go look and see what I last listened to or anything like that. And then if it's a physical book, I'm a weirdo who like keeps all my physical books, and I have moved several times. And my husband has had to unpack these books. And I said, this is my personality. I need these books. This means something to me. Oh, I got another one. I got one more, and then I won't keep doing this. Now, students becoming a part of the process too is part of this, and them teaching me things. Last spring, I had to start keeping track and a note of things my students taught me.
Oh, I love this.
Now, this kid, I was talking about, if you like YA novels at all, if you have not read The Sun is Also a Star by Nicola Yoon, it was the audiobook that like I really think changed my opinion on audiobooks. And I get like emotional when I think about this book. It's very much like a modern retelling of Romeo and Juliet. Have you read it?
Not, but I'm excited for it.
So when I do first chapter Friday with my students, I always make sure to read a book that's on theme for whatever our unit is for the first chapter. And so it's kind of it's like a modern retelling of it. But it doesn't just tell their story, it tells your side character stories. Like when she goes to the security gate, like sporadically throughout the book, that security guard will show back up and it'll be her perspective on something. And it's just like the people, the side characters, right? So I'm telling my students about my like passion for this book, and this kid raises his hand and goes, yeah, it's like Sonder. And I go, what is Sonder? They go, it's a real word. I said, no, I don't know that it is. Now they're showing it to me. It's the background on their phone. And so that I'm like, where is this from? And so they're all Googling it to show me. They're all excited. And it's like all these teenage boys, right? I'm like, what? And it's from John Koenig. I'm not sure how you say his name, from the Dictionary of Obscure Sorrows. Have you read it?
I have not read it, but I follow different Instagram things that pop up the words that you didn't know were words.
These are words he made up. Now, I'm obsessed with etymology, and I love talking to students about the impact of our language and the impact of our words. And I always tell them it's just a scavenger hunt. Like, look for the piece you recognize. And if you don't, it's probably not from Greek or Latin root words. And we have to figure it out as a team. Okay. Like, I'll get you there, but always look for the pieces that you recognize. And that's what he did. And he organizes them in this book based on the different experiences. And he combines them from different languages and different like vernacular and things like that, colloquialisms, and like mashes them up from different cultures. And I sat there, I got for my birthday, because my students found this book, and I put it in my cart, I put that and a little bat stamp. And then as I read the book, and my students were like, this was your big birthday present to yourself? I was like, yes. Also got myself a "This book belongs to Mrs. Clinise" stamp, but that's fine, with a skeleton holding a book. But I got this bat stamp, and as I read the Dictionary of Obscure Sorrows, it took me about a year because I would come back and forth to it because it's not like a narrative. And I would stamp the words that really stuck out to me so I could go back and look at them again and be like, oh, I wonder why that one stood out to me that day. Like no real notes, no real annotating, but just like in the moment, that spoke to me and I can revisit it. That one is like going back and revisiting a friend. Like that is amazing. That was such a cool experience to go through that book.
I had to smile too when you said things my students have told me, because I feel like teachers, we need to get together and put a book together.
Okay.
And my middle one, who just turned 21, he came home one day and was like, I have to do an animal project. And I picked a narwhal. I'm like, they're not real. He's like, yes, they are. I'm like, no, it's the unicorn of the sea. It's fake. I was wrong.
Oh, I
And
love it.
oh my God, there's really a
They
narwhal.
teach us so many things. I started a list and I'm like kicking myself that for over 10 years, I didn't have a list going of all the things that they've taught me. What I do have, and I will recommend for every teacher, and I'm not like toxic positivity and we have to like fall all over ourselves and whatever, like remember your why. I do not believe in remember your why. Like that's not what we're doing. It's my why is, why do I show up here every day? Why do I still want to come to work? Like, why does any of this matter? Why does the content matter? And that was part of my tell them why. We asked the wrong why, right? Like the why is, why does any of this matter? That's the why we should be thinking about, right? So this is not a remember your why moment, but I keep a folder called my don't quit folder. And I think every teacher has some version of this, but you should keep it. And I print stuff out because I don't want a digital copy, much like my students with their folders. So I have a don't quit folder, and it's like random things that kids have, like when they stop by my classroom and it wasn't here and they left a note that's just like, I love you. Or like, or they were leaving my class and this other teacher who has, the creative writing teacher has students write letters to teachers or any adult in their life who made an impact, like those go in there. Just like there's so many things, little drawings students have made. There's so many things in there, and it's tangible, and I can put my hands on it and be like, we're all right. Like, like there is good here, and the kids are all right. They're fine. They're gonna be fine. It's their kids. They only know what they know. Just because we've been in ninth grade for the past 15 years, like they have it and they love it. They're like, what's in the folder? And I was like, that is my business.
Mhm.
That is for me. That is like a post-it note that says Happy Valentine's Day.
Mine was called the Warm Fuzzies, because I had learned that when I was in sixth grade, something about like what's something that gives you warm fuzzies. One of my fifth period classes would come in and we would joke all the time because unfortunately this is the time we had a lot of bomb threats. So I got locked down with them a lot. So I food and snacks and things, but they came in with the silly string and I was standing up on a ledge to put the VCR tape into the TV. You know, it was like up in the corner. All of them came in with containers of silly string the heck out of me.
Oh,
All these different colors, and I collected it, and it's this big hard lump of silly string. I still have it.
and that's the stuff that you're all going to walk out of that classroom and remember. The kids aren't necessarily going to remember every lesson, but they're going to remember that you had the moment where you laughed at it. Like you were like, this is funny. We are buddies. We're having a good time. And there's a line, and that's the stuff they remember. Like the day that I accidentally passed out the test with the answer key on it. And it's not even so much that. They're like, yeah, we remember that. But the best was your reaction. They're like, Miss, you just sat down on the floor behind your desk. I was like, I didn't know what to do.
Yeah, like
every year I do something that I just like look at them and I'm like, I don't know how to fix this.
And that's reality.
And I think that it's important that they see that. That's the awareness of not me pretending it didn't happen or not getting caught. I'm like, well, that was a move that I made. And I will solicit advice. I'm like, what do you guys think I should do? Like, what do I do right now? Now, I'm not actually relying on them to come up with an answer, but
it's good to hear. I was still like, where do we go from here? Yeah. And it'd be curious to see where they're at and what they're thinking.
Listen, they'll tell you. If you ask, they will tell you.
So those of you who are listening, Stephanie's coming back on with her colleague and friend, Erica, and we're going to talk about restorative practices and SEL and what that looks like specifically in the high school classroom. So we're going to get to continue this conversation. If somebody is looking to get a hold of you and is like, I need to talk about AI and pick your brain about a couple things, what is the best way to get a hold of you?
All of my online presence is the same. It's at MRSCLINISE at Mrs. Clinise. So mrsclinise@gmail.com. I'm on Instagram, TikTok, whatever it is that you feel comfortable going on and sending me a note. I've recently had the opportunity to like speak with other schools and work with other teachers, and it's always open. I'm always open. Stay in touch. This isn't a one-time thing. I want to continue to help you the same way I'm going to keep helping those ninth graders. And when they're in 12th grade and come back and say, will you look at my essay? We're here as a team. It's a community effort. So please feel free to reach out if you have questions, whatever it is. I love, as you all can tell, talking. So I'd be happy to continue the conversation.
And for those of you who are listening, go down into the show notes. You'll see all of the links there that you can click on. But sometimes it's just good to hear it in an auditory version as somebody's driving and they're like, oh, I'll remember that and click on it. So please know that Stephanie will be back in a couple weeks with a whole other perspective and digging into restorative practices, SEL. And we did touch on SEL and AI. And I think that it's really important for people to hear from a practicing teacher about what it's really looking like. And again, my focus is a lot in secondary and how can we really take some things that are applicable that people are doing and learn and incorporate them ourselves. So thank you, Stephanie, for your time. I look forward to having you on again and to continuing this conversation.
Thank you, Krista. I'm looking forward to it as well.
Thank you for being part of the SEL in EDU family. As you move into the rest of your day, I invite you to notice one small way social emotional learning showed up in your thinking, your relationships, or your work. Until next time, take care of yourself and keep making space for meaningful, connected learning.